Yo, welcome back to VLR with Justin and Ulam. We are continuing into what I hope should be the last couple of episodes, so let's pick back up where we had left off.
Before we get into that, I should probably tell you something.
Something else you
This
mean
isn't
then?
New Year's Eve in 2028.
Yeah, no kidding.
Today is January 27th.
In 29?
No.
Don't tell me. 30?
Still no.
Yeah, quit with the guessing
What
game,
year
just
is
tell us.
this?
It's 74. 2074.
Yep. Some of us have been on ice for quite a while. No, that's insane. That would mean we were abducted more than 45 years
I
ago.
don't blame you if you don't believe me, but it's the truth.
How can you be sure?
It's not that hard. Quark and I left Earth on January 23rd, 2074. Solar eclipses are easy to predict. We've known that there'd be one on the 27th for a long time. That's just science. Nobody can change that.
But why is the Earth red?
That's a long story. About 45 years ago, on April 13th, 2029, there were 18 annihilation reactors operating in various parts of the world. On the 13th, all 18 of them went up, all at the same time. The explosion was about 180,000 times as powerful as the atom bomb they dropped on Hiroshima.
What?
I
Why?
suppose it started a few months before that.
Yeah, obviously so. Whoever was planning on blowing up this one was probably the same ones. Free the
The
soul.
government had a test site for a future Mars mission out in the middle of Nevada. On December 31st, 2028, there was an accident. Well, accident doesn't quite
See.
convey the right sense of the thing. The point is, Radical 6 claimed its first victims there, then escaped. Didn't take long for it to spread to the rest of the world. Like Luna explained, the virus slows your brain down, but eventually, it also makes you kill yourself. Pretty soon, the bodies started to pile up. Some people would take a dive off a building or shoot themselves in the head. You know, the classics. But for some, it was poison, or fire, or asphyxiation, or the noose. Plenty of people jumped in front of trains or cars. One pilot on a passenger airline drove his plane into the ground.
Only one?
Most forms of transportation ground to a halt pretty fast. That meant food couldn't get distributed, and thousands of people who weren't even infected died from starvation.
All you need is a couple key linchpins, and honestly, the whole society thing starts to fall apart.
Everywhere you went, there were just piles of corpses, covered in flies and rats and crows. I don't know what hell's like, but I imagine it's a lot like
Although
that.
it's interesting, he hasn't mentioned yet about Free the Soul, so does he not know about them? Did they not immediately announce themselves as being behind this? I mean, we
After
know
a
they
while,
are,
people
but I
who
would have
managed
figured.
to avoid getting infected started trying to get in touch with one another. They got a hold of some radios and organized a couple meetings. There was only one thing to discuss, of course. How could
Survival?
they get rid of Radical 6?
Oh, well,
The
yeah.
answer, they decided, was purification. They figured they could just roast the surface of the Earth and that'd kill the virus off for good. On April 13th in 2029,
Interesting.
they put their plan into effect.
Interesting. I was assuming that the blowing up of the reactors was a second part of Free the Soul's plan, so
Their
no.
plan was to detonate all 18
That
annihilation
was-
reactors.
The survivor's plan! Cure is worse than the disease!
Now the truth is, that's mostly just rumor.
Ah,
Nobody really knows what
maybe it
happened.
was indeed still, because that just sounds too much like what Free the Soul would want to
I've got
do.
my own theories. I think that the bombers had already been infected. And when they died, they took billions with them. The ultimate if I die, you're coming with me gesture, I suppose. I bet you money they'd all lost it long before they got to the reactors. Killing most of the world, no matter how bad things had gotten, was not a sane plan. Even
Yeah.
if it wasn't directly responsible. Radical 6 killed most of the people on Earth. Anyway, why it happened isn't that important. Point is, it happened. You ever heard of nuclear winter? Well, that's basically what we got. The explosion threw a ton of crap up into the stratosphere, where it joined up with smoke and ash from all the fires. It
Yep.
blotted out the sun for 7 years. Plants withered and animals died by the millions. The few humans who were left banded together to survive. They were rough times. Eventually, they were over, though. The sky cleared and the sun came back. Plants started blooming again, and the animals that hadn't died out completely began to reappear. Things weren't quite back to normal, though.
Obviously.
It's been 45 years now, but there's still quite a bit of dust and ash in the air. That's what you're seeing. You know why a sunset's red? Well, this is the same thing. Blue and green light have short wavelengths, and they scatter when they run into debris in the air. Red light, on the other hand, has a longer wavelength, which means it'll get a lot farther when the air's dirty. So there you are. The Earth looks red because that's the only color of light that can make it through the atmosphere.
I was speechless. What could I possibly say? There was no reason for Tenmyoji to lie to us. So we were standing on the moon, looking at the Earth. It was 2074. But why? Why were we there? Why were we then? Sigma. Once again, you should know this, at least a little. I was so lost in thought I barely noticed Phi's approach.
Hey, Sigma, I think I figured something out.
Okay. A window popped up on the inside of my helmet with Whisper in the corner. She seemed to be using a circuit only we could hear. Well, that's a convenient thing they only just now alerted us of the presence of. Yeah? What is it?
Figured out why there's an extra E.
Alright, yeah, in 9th.
Yeah. I think it's an anagram. Just like on floor A.
What's Anna say this time,
God
for
damn it,
crying
Sigma.
out loud?
Knock it off! Memento mori, if you
Yeah, so-
rearrange the letters, you get the man on the moon rules the infinite time.
How in the world did you arrive at that? But okay.
See?
No, I'll take your word for it, but...
You need 6 E's to get that. So they stuck an extra one in 9th.
Sure. To what end? Why did they trust that
I
you
think
would
it's
be
a
able to
message for
decipher
us from
that?
Zero Senior and Akane. Remember what she was telling us?
Yeah, that the whole purpose of this thing was the AB game.
To transport the consciousnesses of 2 people
Yeah.
into the...
So, what are you getting at?
My God, you're slow. You don't get
Oh,
it?
Radical 6.
They're
But
saying we rule the infinite time. Infinite time. They weren't just talking about having us jump a couple hours. I think they're planning to send us back. Way back.
all the way back. Are you saying that you think they're going to send us back 45 years? Yes, exactly.
I'd bet on it.
See, the ultimate purpose of the AB project is to send us back in time to that catastrophe Tenmyoji was
I
talking
think
about.
so.
To stop it. That doesn't make sense, though. I mean, we came from that same time period. Before it, actually. So why bring us here and then send us back? Because it took this long to get the dang thing set up?
Well, Akane should be able to tell us the rest. Let's go pay her a visit.
Do you know where she is?
I've got an idea. Come on, think. Remember what she said.
Whoops.
To
Too
free
fast.
ego heiress.
Hold on. Yeah, that's weird. Just as she said it that time, I remembered where else I had heard that before.
Well, come on. What are you waiting for? Let's go.
Well, can we even get back in? We turned and ran back into the pressure exchange chamber, the others following close behind. Not knowing why we were doing this because we'd been on a private channel that whole talk.
What are you doing? Did you forget something?
We're going to have a talk with somebody.
Who?
You really need me to spell it out? The person behind all this.
Akane. I'll take that as a yes. Let me accompany you then.
Wait, why do you know about Akane?
I'll tell you when we get there. Now, if you please. I'm coming with you.
No
Just
kidding.
said the magic word.
Yes, indeed we did.
I'm going too then. So am I.
Well, yeah, it's not like any of them are going to want to
Hey,
stay behind anyway.
Is this Akane you're talking about?
Yeah, you know her real well.
Wait, you're serious? What the hell is going on?
What do you think, Clover? Just shut up. Come if you want to. We don't need to do roll call. Once we get there, Akane can explain everything. Can, but will she? Not really her style. With that, we headed back through the airlock. I was going to be curious if it turns out that the number 9 door indeed does just allow you back in. Because not supposed to. We'll see. So we re-enter through a different door. Well, it appears to just be opening for us.
The number 9 door on floor A is shut forever once the game ends. Assuming Zero Jr. was telling the truth, of course. But the door on floor B...
Yeah. Thought we might be able to take the lift to it. And it looks like I was right.
Any idea where Akane might be?
Probably, possibly still one way, but... Yeah, the grave.
You mean the grave in the garden?
Yeah, don't worry. I don't think she's buried there or anything. Chances are she's alive, just in the grave. I mean, that's how Snake was last game. In a coffin, but well and truly alive. Anyway, let's move to the garden. For the last time, game really did not need these in-between travel sections. Alright. Yep. Let's get over there. Key strapped to my ankle.
Is Akane really under here?
I think so.
What should we do? Are we gonna dig her out?
No, I don't think we'll have to do anything like that. See the keyhole in the grave? If I just insert this here, pulled the key off my ankle and fitted it into the hole. Twisted it to the right until I heard something break. Unlocked. With a quiet grinding, the grave began to shift, and we all jumped back, I assume. Yeah, because if any of us had been standing there, that would have been...
What is this?
Yet another
It
cryopod.
doesn't look like a coffin.
Yeah, it's
Have
a
we not been
treatment
to the
pod.
treatment? I guess we didn't visit the treatment
Oh
room
my
in this
god.
timeline.
It is, isn't it?
The glass on the cover had frosted over, making it opaque. We couldn't see who or what was in it.
Let's see what's inside.
No kidding. She grabbed a hold of the lever on the side of the pod.
No good.
Oh, yeah, you gotta open it
I
first.
think it's
from
locked.
Treatment pod TP 00.
Oh.
Stage 1.
Apparently this part of it is
Defrosting complete.
automated and we have to wait on
Stage
stuff.
2 will be complete in 10 minutes. Once stage
Oh.
2 is
Yep.
complete,
It's automatic,
the
so
lock
they
will
won't allow us to
automatically
use the
dis-
manual. Guess we're stuck
What?
here for a few minutes. These pods can put people into cold sleep. It uses something called CAS to freeze human bodies without destroying their cells.
So, Ms. Akane's like an ice cube?
Yeah, essentially.
And we gotta wait till she melts?
Thaws. is
So how about
more
you tell us your
appropriate, but-
story while we wait, Kay? Specifically, why do you know Akane?
I remembered
What do you remember?
everything.
Sure.
I was born and raised in this facility. It's called Rhizome 9. A
Interesting.
rhizome is an underground plant stem that spreads by sending out roots. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, since it goes down in...
This facility is a little like a rhizome. Supposedly, that's why they call these installations that. The number comes from the facility's number.
Wow, so
There are
several of
54
them.
rhizomes on the moon, and this is the 9th one. Well, I suppose the other ones
Fascinating.
don't really matter to you, do they?
I mean, should
In any
they?
event, I grew up here with Akane and Zero Senior. I watched them create the AB project.
The AB project?
Yes. Its purpose is to send Phi and Sigma,
Alright, well, I
or
guess
their
cat's out of the bag
consciousnesses
now.
at least,
Now everyone's
to the
been told.
past.
Back 45
Yes.
years, right?
So, you want us to change history, huh? Go back and keep Radical 6 from getting out, and stop the reactors from
I
exploding.
mean, if you keep Radical 6 from getting out, that should stop the reactors from exploding.
That's our mission?
Well,
We shouldn't need
not
them both.
exactly.
Oh, well, alright.
It's true that the ultimate goal of the project is to
Yeah,
keep
is to
Radical
keep that
6
from
from
the
spreading to the
general
general
population.
population. But even if you do make it back, you won't be able to do much. By now, it's already too late.
Too late?
For... What do you
Let me
mean?
begin at the beginning.
Sure, why not?
You might be thinking that Zero Senior and Akane were the ones who created all this, but that's not entirely correct. They only followed the histories they'd already seen. It was the only choice they had. Nothing less than the future of mankind is at stake. We need the two of you to jump through timelines while maintaining your memories. That is why you had to play the AB game, and why the chromatic doors were necessary. By forcing multiple options, you could make numerous jumps.
We've seen this exact phrasing somewhere.
We
I'm fairly
speculated that
certain.
jumping more would strengthen your memories.
We?
The puzzles were also there for a purpose. Some theories hold that a moment of insight when you solve a puzzle strengthens your connection to the fourth dimension. That was the reason for the puzzles. Your infection with Radical 6 was also a vital part of our plan. By slowing down your brain's processing speed, we can store your potential. With that energy stored up, we just had to provide a life or death situation to launch your consciousness into the fourth dimension. Like a bullet from a slingshot.
Yeah, okay. There's no way that Kay would just be using... This is Akane. Akane's been in the suit in this timeline. Which
Wait,
eliminates
hold on
and lets
just a
us
minute
know...
here.
Oh,
We keep
maybe 10
talking about
Yojis.
Sigma and Phi, but what about the rest of us?
Oh, no, okay.
Why did you
He's
bring
not
us
arrived
here?
at it either.
That's simple. In earlier histories, you were all here in Rhizome 9. We needed you here to accurately replicate those histories.
I beg your pardon?
Although I suppose that's probably not a good enough explanation for you. In a sense, though, it is the truth. Our primary goal was to replicate
Again,
history.
power.
The rest is... Yes. I suppose I should explain. Very well. I will try and do so in a way you can understand. First, Alice and Clover. They were abducted 45 years and 1 month ago, on December 22nd, 2028. The location is Earth, of course, more specifically, Los Angeles, California, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
After being kidnapped, your bodies were sent to a facility under Akane's direction. You were placed in treatment pods and immediately put into cold sleep.
Which ironically means this technology has existed since their time, so they should have been at least a little aware of it.
4 months later, you arrived at this facility. The date you finally arrived was April 14th, 2029. Your trip from Earth to this facility was aboard a spaceship powered by an annihilation engine. Following your arrival, your pods were placed in long-term storage. Does that make sense?
Are you telling me we were sleeping in those pods here for 45 years?
That's
Yes.
exactly what he
In
said.
preparation for this day.
But what do you need us?
You are an Esper, aren't you, Clover? I mean that you are able to access the fourth dimension. Am I wrong?
Did Akane tell you?
In a manner of speaking. As I've already
See, in a
explained,
manner of speaking,
the purpose
yeah,
of this
it's Akane,
project is to
doesn't
send
it?
Sigma and Phi's
Because
consciousnesses
she's
to the
alive in this
past.
timeline.
Espers are able to sort of resonate with one another,
Curious.
which can amplify their
Doesn't
power.
explain why you needed Alice.
You understand? And this is why we brought you here, Clover.
What about me?
We needed your help, Alice, to deactivate Dio's bombs.
You only needed her help deactivating the bombs because you invited Dio in and let him plant them.
Huh?
But sure.
I didn't do anything.
But you did. In another history, you were able to perform a prime decomposition on the 25-digit integer that Dio left behind. Only you could do that sort of thing. Because of your feat at
that's
mathematics, we were about to determine
okay,
that Dio
now I
had
think I see
planted the
what
bombs.
they're getting at.
Then we were able to question him and get the password for the number 31.
Fascinating. So, if I'm reading
Finally,
what
we used
Akane
that
is
information
saying
to stop the
correctly,
bomb in this timeline.
the past histories that she's referring to, I think, is this game. So somehow Akane was able to view the entirety of what goes on in all of these future, what was future for her histories, which leads to da-da-da-da-da-da.
Without your help, Alice, we would have been reduced to nothing more than so much space dust.
In the timelines where bombs are planted at all.
This history exists because of your presence. Now, let me explain why we needed Tenmyoji and Quark.
Because Akane just likes to screw with Tenmyoji.
Tenmyoji is simple. We needed you for the same reason we needed Clover.
Well, right.
You are able to access the fourth dimension. Almost half a century ago, you used them. We needed you to resonate with Sigma and Phi. So we brought you here.
And K was the bargain, Quark was the bargaining
All it
chip.
took was a messenger.
Do you want to see Akane? If you do, come with me. I was a fool and fell for it.
Yes.
And you brought Quark with you. In fact, you insisted that he come.
Yeah, I know. I guess you were worried about leaving me alone, huh?
Yeah, in retrospect.
He kept saying you couldn't run off to the moon and leave me behind.
Although, Well, no, maybe they're gonna say that
Sorry,
Quark was
Quark.
also necessary.
If I hadn't been so
Because this is
stupid and
implying that
selfish,
actually
none
Quark
of
was
this would have
not.
happened to you. I never thought this would happen. Can you ever forgive me?
Oh, don't worry. I mean, I agreed to come. I
Yep.
thought the moon would be way more. What kid would turn that down?
We didn't see the messenger after we got on the ship. It was on autopilot. During the
Mm-hmm.
trip, Zero told me to keep quiet once we got there.
Interesting. So,
I don't remember anything after we landed.
Then there was a bunch of that white smoke.
yeah,
And we
obviously.
passed out. And when I woke up, I was in the AB room.
Now, his real name is Left, and he's the leader of a terrorist organization called the Myrmidons. He was ordered to come here. The Myrmidons are under the control of an organization called Free the Soul, which is in turn controlled by a man known as Brother. It was Brother who orchestrated the release of Radical 6
Yep.
into the general population
And was it
45
Brother
years
who
ago.
orchestrated the detonation of the...
Do you remember what Phi mentioned earlier? The ultimate purpose of the AB project.
Yep.
If we succeed, that would be bad for Brother and his organization. Our success would prevent them from creating the ideal world they're working toward.
Yeah, Dead World.
That is why Brother sent Left, his trusted lieutenant, to this facility. They needed to stop the AB project. So, Dio, with the first, was to eliminate Akane. The second was to join the AB game and win it. If Dio won the game, the AB project would not be completed. At least, not in that timeline. In other words, in that world, the project would have been stopped. If things didn't go as planned, Dio was given a contingency plan. If you cannot murder Akane and win the game, destroy Rhizome 9.
Ah. Interesting. So based on that, again, this kind of disproves their whole... Because it's a game that is deterministic, their silly quantum nonsense doesn't hold true, because this indicates the fact that the bombs are placed in this rightmost timeline, regardless of whether or not we've gone back yet and saved Akane in the past. That still means that this rightmost timeline only has the bombs because every time it's been Akane in the suit the whole time, because she didn't die in this rightmost timeline, even before we've gone back to save her.
Hence, the bombs.
And hence, in this timeline, even without us looking in the box, the cat is alive, regardless. It's not in a superposition.
Can I ask you something?
Perhaps.
How did Brother know about the AB project?
He
They
was
let him.
also an Esper. We can set Brother aside for now, though. May I proceed?
No one objected. We were all curious.
Excellent. That explains everyone, save two, Luna and myself. Sigma and Phi already know the truth about Luna. I don't believe I should reveal any more, however. I think it would be more appropriate if you could ask Luna yourselves at a later time. Would that be all right with you, Luna?
Yes, that's okay.
As for me, as I said before, I was born and raised here. The rest of you were brought to this facility, but I've never left. That makes me someone close to Zero Senior and Akane.
Hey, I've been wondering, who is Zero Senior?
You've already met him, Sigma, in another timeline.
Yeah, well, I saw a hologram. I still don't know who he is.
Stage 2.
Ah.
TP.
Excellent. Well, I presume it is
It looks
time
like it's
for
finished.
probably one of the game's biggest reveals.
Shall we open the pod?
That I will go ahead and spoil for you. I knew ahead of time. All of us gathered around the pod. The glass was still covered with frost, hiding the contents.
Okay, let's get started then. Ready?
Yep. Phi laid her hand on the lever and looked around at us. I swallowed. Yeah,
All right.
anytime.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Did not need the countdown, just... Okay, come on. Look, we waited 10 minutes for this already. Let's move on. Dun dun dun! What? Suddenly, my head was full of memories from other timelines. I'd seen something like this before. The warehouse of Floor B, in front of the white door. Kay was lying in front of me. I'd grabbed his mask and saw... my own face. I'd never figured out who he really was. Why was there a man with my face underneath Kay's armor? It didn't make sense. After I'd seen him, I was injected with tubicurine, and that was the end of that. But wait, if the person in the pod was the same person I'd seen on the floor of the warehouse, who was wearing Kay's armor?
You finally noticed. Didn't I tell you? You won't be alone. I will be at your side, watching over you.
No. Oh my
Yes,
god, you're...
I am.
Made a little obvious by her constant use of our
Akane
plan a
Kurashiki.
moment ago.
It's you. June. I mean, Akane. But you're old.
Actually, so are you. Your body's just been kept restored. Which begs the question, what is that gonna have on lifespan expectancy?
Yes, that's correct. I haven't spoken to you in a very long time, Clover. Or you, Junpei.
Yeah, and the last time you spoke to either of them was before jetting out and leaving them in a desert.
Junpei?
She hadn't made that connection yet?
Akane.
Oh, right. I think it was a different timeline when he had revealed that to
Long
her.
time no see.
Boy, this has gotta be... I could barely hear what they were saying. My mind was still reeling. It felt like all the air had been knocked out of me, and it was all I could do to not collapse right there and then.
When? How long?
Do you remember when the two of you saved me in the warehouse?
Ka-chow!
Once you saved me, you went back to your future. Well, your minds did at least. I carried your bodies to the third AB room, and then took Dio's to the fifth. After that, I went into the first room and borrowed Kay's armor.
So
And
by the
just
time you and
didn't
Clover
wake him
came
up?
out, you'd already...
Yes.
Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Dio killed you, and then Luna took your body to the sixth room. You couldn't have been in Kay's armor.
No, it was me. In this timeline, at least.
Yeah, again.
In this one, I wasn't murdered by Dio. You
Obviously,
two saved me.
Again, the bombs don't get planted unless that's the case.
It's just like Schrodinger's
No,
cat.
again, it is exactly
Your
not, but whatever.
actions in the future. This,
Alright, what about
Anyway.
the other history? Who's wearing the armor?
that's for
obviously.
the man in front.
Him?
That's correct. Whenever I'm not in the armor, he is.
What about the memory loss?
For my part, I confess that I lied. He, on the other hand, was telling the truth. Large doses of soporil can cause memory loss. I gave him
If that's the
a
case,
rather
and medicine is
large
causing
dose.
that, that wouldn't be something that just recovers either, probably. That would be pretty permanent.
So, who is he?
You've never seen him before?
No.
What about the rest of you?
Yeah, she's
I have no idea who he
angling
is.
for something.
I've never seen him before.
Me either. Total stranger.
Hey, come on, what are you guys saying? Right here? Same face?
Are you alright, Mr. Sigma? Did you hit your head or something?
Huh? What? It didn't make any sense. Why didn't they recognize me?
Sigma, your consciousness can jump through time. You can inhabit your body in the past or in the future.
What does that
Don't
mean?
you get it?
There's a reason that we've been in first person this entire time.
You've jumped to the future from 45 years ago.
I looked around frantically. A pond I ran to and threw myself down under my knees, and wondered how, in the many times I've been near reflective surfaces, I hadn't thought to do this before. Crawling on all fours, I approached the edge. My heart was hammering inside my chest. The cold sweat trickled down my spine. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down, damn it. I struggled to take deep breaths. Then slowly, I peered into the pond, looking for my reflection. What? No, this can't be real. This face.
It's your face, Dr. Sigma Climb. Although, to the you that's behind it now, it's your face 45 years from now.
A face.
Zero,
I should pretty
the
well.
mastermind of the AB project, is you.
Again, due to time-based things, not... The 45 years from now me is 0. I'm not yet. What? No, that's not possible. That's bullshit.
No, it's the truth.
It's
Fighting
pretty
isn't
obvious
going
now,
to
too,
do
as well, now that
you
you've seen the
any
reflection.
Please, Doctor.
I'm not a
You will
doctor.
be a pioneer in the field of genetic engineering.
You're lying.
No, I'm not. You created him. Well, I suppose I should say you are going to create him. His
Create.
name is Kyle Klein, your clone. That is why he looks just like a younger version of yourself. 23 years ago, in the biolab here in Rhizome 9, you created Kyle. Well, I suppose for you, that's still in the future.
Yeah, kinda, considering I'm here, which, yeah.
When I said I was born and raised here, I was still pretending to be him. The gravity here is only 1/6 of Earth. If nothing was done, the reduced gravity would cause his bones to be weaker than normal human ones. But you prepared for that. You gave him that armor. Ever since he was born, he's lived inside of it. It kept his muscles and bones strong. He wasn't forced into it for the nonary game. He's been wearing it every day, all his life.
Not until you put him to sleep in the cryo tube. But why would future me create a clone?
He was to be your spare. If something happened to you before the project began, he would take your place.
I wouldn't. Hell, I can jump 45 years back because I existed then. He didn't exist far enough back to make that work.
I mentioned before that the AB projects A and B stood for after and before. That isn't all they mean, though. The A also means anima, and the B means body. Anima is another word for the soul, or the consciousness. Body is, well, exactly what it says on the tin. The past consciousness will go into the future body, and the future consciousness will go into the past body. They switch. That was the chief goal of the project.
Wait, so the future person goes into the past person? Which, technically speaking, seeing as how I am now here from 45 years ago, the very fact that that's true means the project's already succeeded before it's begun, doesn't it?
Sigma, do you remember the note you found in the garden?
I've managed to, unlike most of our other jumps or that one jump into the past where for some reason there was a time limit and we got pulled back, old Zero Senior Sigma has been in the past presumably for about as long as we've been now in the future, which is a much longer time period, which is presumably long enough to do good enough stuff. And or maybe part of the point is that the amount of time I'm spending here is not only training all this, but it's also hopefully giving me whatever information I need so that when I switch back into the past self, I'll now have been gone out of my body for a little bit of time, and in exchange, have all the stuff I need to do whatever the plan is.
This, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Ah, of course, it was you who investigated the garden in this timeline.
Yeah.
Sigma, take a good look at this. It's an illustration of the time jumps your consciousness is making.
Huh, okay.
A
Take your
is
word
where
for it.
everything began.
Getting knocked
December
out in the car.
25th.
Yeah.
You inhaled the white smoke in your car and lost consciousness. From there, you jumped to B. January 25th, 2074. You woke up in one of the AB rooms in Rhizome 9. You are in your own body, but it is 67 years old.
And heavily cybernetic.
Your consciousness has jumped 45 years into the future. I believe that may explain why you didn't notice the reduced lunar gravity.
I'm also infected.
The body you woke up in was much older. Normally, you would have noticed that your muscles were much weaker. In this case, however, the lower gravity
That doesn't need to be
balanced
explained
that out.
again. The brain slowed.
Moving on. If you continue along this line, you reach
You hit
C,
C.
which is January 27th, 2074. That is today.
Interesting. So yeah, this time jump, unlike that one to just before the game, this jump has lasted for at least 2 days, depending on what hours we're talking about in these cases.
Whoa.
Could be slightly
Wait,
less.
what do you mean? Are you saying it's been 2 days since we woke up?
Yes, I think that's pretty clearly what you
36
said.
hours to be exact.
So, like I
Have
said,
you already
slightly less.
forgotten you were all infected with Radical 6? The virus slowed your brain down, so yes, 36 hours of real time have passed.
Which occurs to me, the watches would have needed to have been synchronized to that too, or else we would have been noticing, or else we would have all been like, why is time moving so fast?
But to you, it only seemed like 14 hours and 40 minutes.
So that's part of why we didn't notice.
Now comes the after this, your consciousness will return to the past.
But according to this, not all the way back to A.
It will re-emerge at point D.
And how
April
do you
13th,
figure that that's going to be delayed?
2029. You will return to your younger body.
But not at the point where I
But that's
started,
the same day as the reactor explosions.
Yes,
which isn't far enough back yet.
that is why I said it will be too late. You will return to the past, but the events you would want to prevent will have already happened. The story does not end there, however. The line continues.
Yeah, clearly.
After reaching point D, you will eventually return to B.
Wait, no, yeah, here, going around D, then returning to B. Interesting. At which point my consciousness would be forced out by the arriving one from A.
But this time, you won't be jumping through time, or at least not at a rate faster than normal. Your consciousness will spend 45 years inhabiting the same body, until you reach point B. Do you remember when B?
Yeah, at the beginning of the game.
Correct. That was when the consciousness of the 22... So where did the older version of you go when you took his body?
Presumably all the way back to A. They all
Yes,
started.
his consciousness will go back in time 45 years. For a period of time, he will inhabit your younger body. While your younger consciousness is elsewhere, he will be you in the past.
But once that body reaches point D, my 22-year-old consciousness will come back from point C.
That's correct. When that happens, the older version of you will be ejected from your younger body and return to your body at C.
So it's rotating?
Rotate. I suppose you could put it that way. But look at this illustration.
Yeah.
What if you take all these lines and untangle them? You get one single line. It may look complicated, but in truth, it's a single straight path.
Well, with a divergence point at E, to be sure.
With one exception.
Oh, she was about to call it out.
Exactly. Point E is December 31st, 2028, the day of the total eclipse.
The day Radical 6 got out of the test facility.
Yes. By now, you've likely figured it out on your own. The purpose of the AB project was to get the consciousness of the 67-year-old Sigma from point B to point A. If we can do that, we can change what happened 45 years ago.
So the old version of me will keep Radical 6 from getting out. By jumping into my 22-year-old body on New Year's Eve?
Yes. That is why this line could not be interrupted. In order for the 67-year-old version of you to reach point B, we first have to go through point D. In order to get to point D, we must jump from point C. And for point C to happen, we had to recreate everything that happened in this facility. That is why we have faithfully retraced history up to this point, so that we might save humankind from destruction and undo the horrors of the last 45 years.
All right. Which should mean that point is approaching rapidly, then. You said the point C is today, so when?
Yes.
Momentarily? But look, I'm still old. When is this jump supposed to happen?
Very soon, yes.
And what's going to trigger
We
it?
need potential energy stored to send your consciousness into the fourth dimension. Fortunately, we now have plenty of that. Thanks, ironically, to Radical 6.
Yeah,
All that remains is to launch your consciousness, like a bullet from a slingshot.
And how do you propose to do
Didn't I
that?
tell you? A crisis. A moment balanced between life and death.
Well, that explains why this music is
That
playing.
can jumpstart your brain.
What do you mean?
Figured it out. I mean this.
Yeah. Dio's knife? No sooner were the words out of my mouth. Okay. Then she went at Phi. I screamed and leapt toward them. Akane was already in motion, the knife diving toward Phi's chest. I was almost there. And then suddenly I wasn't. When I regained consciousness, I was on the floor. Okay, well, so did I not make the jump? There was a dull pain in my chest. I felt for a cut, but something was in the way. It took me a moment to realize it was Akane's body lying on top of me. I twisted my neck to look around. Nearby was an old tombstone. On it was written a few words in Latin. Yeah, that's why that was in the other room. The security room with the cameras. Wait a minute. So I was under the impression, maybe it'll be post-credits, I was under the distinct impression that we got to see some of what happens when you travel back, but maybe not. Huh. Well, this has certainly been an interesting journey, so cards on the table. I knew several of the plot twists as we progressed through here in trying to research the game for the purposes of like putting together the way that I did the thumbnails to where, in case you didn't notice, each of the thumbnails' primary color in the background was matched to whichever of the timeline branches we were going through. That turned out not to be as useful or meaningful as I'd intended, but as part of researching for those purposes, I kind of had to come across a couple of these larger spoilers. So, for instance, I wasn't just suspicious of Dio, I kind of knew who he was right from the get-go and had to sort of try to pretend play acting that I didn't know to whatever effect. There were a couple things that did genuinely surprise me. A couple of the aspects that, well, obviously, due to my disdain for them, you might have guessed that the whole quantum nonsense with both Alice's flip-flopping votes and a few of the aspects of Akane's being alive, being dead stuff, I sort of was vaguely aware of, but I didn't know the specifics of. So this was still very interesting to sort of have like this wasn't exactly my first playthrough in the sense that I knew a lot of those plot beats, but it still was certainly for the puzzles, and so it was sort of like a 1.5 playthrough. So there's still one more game in the series. Like I said, I'm holding out and continuing to talk because I'm hoping that we get at least something in the post-credits, but whether we do or we don't, I don't think we'll be proceeding immediately to the third game. I've got some other games lined up that I think we're going to try, and here's our moment to see. Is it just going to put me on the save screen? Yes, obviously it was Phi End. Here we go, yep. So one more new destination on the flowchart. Presumably... fully separated, and yeah, goodness gracious, that one was long. And let's go ahead and see what's here. So technically speaking, this should be still part of the Doomed.
2029.
Yeah, this is still part of the Doomed
evening
timeline.
news. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I don't have any news to read. All of our station's reporters have... So have my... Excuse me. Have managed to keep us on the air until now. But I'm out of tricks. It's time for me to sign off. This concludes our broadcast day. I pray that someday... Goodbye.
Okay. Yeah, this is a lovely point to have jumped into. For a moment, I just stared at the TV. The roar of the static seemed to fill the entire room until, with a click, it disappeared too. Had the power gone out? I heard footsteps behind me and turned around. You. Akane.
Looks like the first step was successful.
What the fuck? You killed me! I guess technically you're going to kill me 45 years from now, but still.
Hey, no need to be rude about it. I didn't kill you. I hit you with the butt of the knife. You're fine.
How do you... Whatever. I thought the point of this was for Phi and me to travel back, not Akane and me, but okay.
Yes. You and Phi needed to experience a state of crisis.
Also, with Phi being so much younger, where is she jumping back to? Me and Phi?
Yes, I only told you about you, but we also needed Phi to jump.
Alright, and where was she jumping? How far back could she possibly be jumping? Oh, unless she's
now,
also
you know
someone from
next,
around
right?
this time who's young enough to have been on ice until this point. We go to the moon?
Correct. We will be leaving tomorrow, April 14th. We've nearly finished preparing your shuttle.
Yeah,
Only
so
a
now
few
he gets to
last-minute
live for
checks and
45
additions.
years, only to then get to do the last jump.
You'll be traveling to Rhizome 9, along with 3 treatment pods.
Alice, Clover... Yeah, and maybe Phi, so I guess maybe Phi is just this old as well.
Yes.
Well, the third one who's
Phi.
in there?
We
Yeah, I'd
put her
have to
into
assume.
cold sleep 2 days ago. She appeared at our headquarters and volunteered to be frozen.
Also,
That
our
wasn't
headquarters?
the Phi who jumped from point C, though. It was Phi before she jumped from point A to point D. In other words, she was following the same path you are, and she still is.
Then that means that after you froze her, the point C version of her jumped back into her body?
Yes. The point C version of Phi is sleeping in that pod. She'll stay there for the next 45 years.
Of course, I'll have to be working for the next 45
Sleeping
years.
in ice.
Then when she gets to point B, her consciousness will jump to point A.
Correct.
At which point, I will also be doing so. So that's why she didn't look old. But she's about as old as me then, presumably. And Clover and... So why don't you just stick me in one of those
We can't
spots?
do that. You haven't figured it out?
I have
You have
work
to
to
spend
do.
the next 45 years working on the AB project. After arriving at Rhizome 9,
Yep.
you must master genetic engineering and artificial intelligence programming, among other disciplines. Otherwise, you will be unable to create Kyle, Luna, and Lagomorph. And, of course, you will need to develop the chromatic doors and the bracelets.
The bracelets are essentially the same as the ones you already had, and the chromatic doors are colored doors, Akane.
You'll also be the person who summons Tenmyoji and Quark. Once you've completed all the preparations, then the project can actually begin. January 25th, you will defrost Phi
Yep.
and Once you've done that, the 22-year-old version of you from point A will force you out.
And we will finally get to
And
change
you'll
the
just
past
go
of
back
that.
45 years to your own...
In the car, waking up with presumably you having knocked me out at that point? Do you really think I can keep the virus from getting
You
out?
have to. If you don't, billions of people will die. Only you and Phi
mean-
can save them.
They'll die to that. We're all mortal, but yeah. What about you? Aren't you an Esper
I
too?
can't do anything on my own. If this is going to work, I'll need your help.
Yeah, of course. So, what do I need
What do
to
you
do?
mean?
Like, what specific actions do I need to take? When Phi and I jump to point A, what are we going
You'll
to do
both
then?
enter the Mars mission test site.
And after that?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, of course she doesn't know.
I
That's
really
part
don't
of a
know anything
timeline
about
that
what happens in there.
diverges.
We don't know how the Radical Six escaped. We don't even know why it was there in the first place.
I think you can guess. And we're
That's
screwed.
why we need you. You have the ability to jump through time and across parallel worlds. We need you to figure out what happened in that test facility. Things will be difficult, and I'm sure you will find yourself in a great deal of danger. But I believe the two of you can overcome any obstacle.
Wait, how do you know it's so
The
dangerous?
67-year-old version of you told me what happened. He wasn't able to stop the virus.
But if he told you what happened, shouldn't that be information you're passing back to me now?
So I suppose
So
you could say
you
he
should
told me.
know how
I
it got
do
out,
think.
unless that's for crying out, unless yeah, unless we're locked in a loop of failure. What did I say?
That the test facility is full of traps.
Fantastic.
There was one point. A woman's life was in danger. You risked yourself for her sake, and lost your arms and your right eye.
Oh, so are they already cybernetic at this point? My arms and my right eye. Yes, they are cybernetic. They're just not nearly so well hidden yet. Uh-oh, suddenly a low rumble shook the building, and we should maybe already be getting out of there.
Go have
What
a
was
look.
that? Why have a look? I would have figured the whole point in having point C be here was to make sure that we got liftoff and were out of the atmosphere before this happened. I moved slowly to the window and peered outside. On the horizon, I could see a massive mushroom cloud climbing slowly toward the sky. Would we really be able to change the course of history? No, that was the wrong way to look at it. It couldn't be a question. I had to change history. We could save the world. I'm going to change history. I stared at the darkening skies above us and steeled myself. I would succeed. Even though I haven't, so that's confusing. End or beginning. Alright, and is that does appear. Yep, that is the full end. So, fascinatingly, if my read of... Oh, no, hold on. There is still yet more. Alright, well, this is going to end up having been an extremely extended episode. I'm going to go ahead and call this here. I don't know how much time is there, but I'm kind of guessing that in this another time is going to have probably a lot of finishing up dialogue just to close out the loops on a lot of these characters. So this is more or less the actual end of the series, and then next will just sort of be a bonus episode covering that. And then after that, we will proceed into some other games that I've got lined up. I would assume then that based on the way that this ends and the fact that this is set after the time when we had gone back again, that the third game, I wasn't entirely sure of what was going on, but now I'm guessing perhaps that third game is then meant to be the Nevada test site, and perhaps the reason there were traps and the reason he couldn't get through it initially in just one go is because that's an entire game they have set up planned for their third one. So, thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time.